Hi, welcome to Ethereal Mechanics Behind the Scenes number 7. We're going to discuss the recent developments and path forward. Again, we have a success on all fronts. I'm going to go over each one of these. In Q vectors, it's always been bothering me that the Q dimension, which I basically dumped everything in, is kind of ambiguous, and so kind of in violation of the 17th rule of acquisition, known as the ambiguity tell. But I went on with it. And then later, we had failures at higher dimensions. It worked great. All the identities worked great at 2 dimensions, and we lost some identities at 3 dimensions, enough to go forward. But then at 4 dimensions, we lost more identities, and the 5th dimension, we lost a lot. And that kind of troubled me too, but I figured it was enough to go forward on 3 dimensions. Then I was thinking about it, and I realized that there's still prior knowledge that's clouding my thinking. And I'm going to explain what that is when we get into what the new version of Q vectors are going to be. And basically what it is, I discovered that something is broken about classical vectors that I had accepted as fact because it works so well. And again, that's third rule of acquisition, the utility fallacy. Just because something works doesn't mean it's right. So here, all over, the rules of acquisition are screaming at me, and so I decided to do something. I figured out how to resolve this. And it's actually quite spectacular. I'm not sure if it's right yet. I still have a lot more work to go on it. And the Q dimension goes away, so the new form of these vectors is no longer going to be Q algebra. But it's going to be pretty much all the same idea stuff going forward, that the multiplication of 2 vectors is a matrix. That part hasn't changed. There's a new Distinti University course. The follow-on to the Foundation series begins Ethereal Mechanics all over again, except this time I'm going to eliminate a lot of the garbage. The reason why there's a lot of garbage in the original telling of Ethereal Mechanics is because I thought I had limited time on this planet, and so I jumbled everything together. If you watch the original series, it's the rules of acquisition melted with problems with science, problems with classical theory. Everything's all jumbled together. So it's a convoluted story, and in my opinion, that because it was my first foray into it, it's not very well done. Now what we've got is we've broken everything up into discrete chunks, like new wave theories, one chunk, the Ethereal Mechanics. In this first video, in this new retelling, is going to be just the introduction to Ethereal Mechanics and just the development of the fluidic models. That's just treating the ether as a single fluid for retelling gravity and inertia and all that stuff, and irrotational flows. So we're going to rederive all the equations we have that I think originated in videos 22 and 23, which go over the fluidic concepts of the ether. That's going to be the foundation for then we go into the binary version of the ether, the more detailed version, which covers wave theory and whatnot. This is the first video is going to be out in 2 weeks. And the other thing that's nice about it, because I'm cleaning out all the other stuff, I'm making the rules of acquisition a separate thing, and I'm making the math a separate thing, is that I came up with some very awesome ways of making the analogy that inertia is coupling to the medium. And the analogies, I think, are quite good. You'll have to give me your judgment when you see it in the next 2 weeks. Anyway, that's coming up. I really don't have the name for it yet, but it's going to be the University course, Ethereal Mechanics 01. New video series. Again, as per the Foundation series, relativity is only a special case of ethereal behavior. In the Breaking Relativity series, we'll feature a series of experiments to show where relativity breaks down. And this Breaking Relativity is going to be the experimental side of Ethereal Mechanics, where we're going to be retelling the story, but breaking relativity is going to be going on in the background with experimental evidence of the ether and whatnot. Now the experiments leading up to, part of what's going to be in breaking relativity is the high voltage power supply I'm working on. I just finished the main charge pump here, which this will just produce 12 kilovolts. And again, everything that's in high voltage is encased in for safety reasons, and also to protect this is the 200 volt circuit here, and then that's all protected. This is all going to be the Arduino controls to it. That way there, if I keep everything isolated and separate, I don't have arcing and won't damage a whole bunch of stuff in one single arc, because a single arc of 12 kilovolts will kill an Arduino. All right, so this is finished this weekend. I'll be trying this out for the first time in 2 weeks when I come back. As far as Larry Wandell's experiment, he has a new video. I don't know if you saw. I got myself a magnet. Now, I assume this little plate was aluminum. I have an aluminum plate here, and I got a silver dollar. And I think I got a magnet about the same size as he has in the video, as you can see it. Now, see how it moves the plate around along with the silver dollar? Well, that led me to believe that this plate here is an aluminum. And so I found myself an old project box, the kind that used to be able to buy from Radio Shack, and sure enough, it's not inductive, which is really interesting. It's very lowly. It is, but not as much as the aluminum is, which is very interesting, because now when I put the silver dollar on, I can move the silver dollar around without moving the plate. So this plate is a special metal. It's not pure aluminum. I don't know what it is, but it is a factor in the experiment. Now, as far as, we're going to, put this thing on the plate and let it charge. I don't know I forgot how long he did it for. But he was gas bagging and going on about just because you do something once and it doesn't work, just because you haven't done it enough times in enough different ways, whatever. So I think that's about enough time. See how it came up? It did come off the plate, okay? I was able to lift it off the plate, but that's due to induction, the same reason that causes this. Okay, but because the plate didn't come up with it, because the plate is not as inductive as this is. And that's where I ran into problems with the aluminum plate, because when I tried to do it this way with just the aluminum plate, they both move around. And so when I try to pick this up, they both come up. And there's an interesting thing. If I just use the aluminum plate here, I can pretty much recreate his experiment. But that's all due to induction, nothing else. There's no magnetic attraction. This is the eddy currents forming. You can see how it's repelling when I try to slap it against it. The braking, the magnetic braking, stops the aluminum plate from actually hitting it. And then by the same token, the magnetic braking prevents it from shaking off when I try to shake it. All right. So now, I don't consider this experiment that he did. Now, maybe if I had a different shaped magnet where it's a little thinner, I think he had a thinner one, I could probably end up lifting this off and doing what he did. But it's not because of anything other than electromagnetic induction. The same thing that causes this. Okay, so I pick it up really fast, I can actually pick it up. Okay, and if I do it quickly enough, I can keep it from rolling off by induction. So with a smaller magnet that has more current density around here, I could probably have a lot more traction on the silver dollar. But a lighter material, aluminum, is much easier to do this with. So I bet you if I got a coin of these, it's really made out of aluminum, this trick would really work well. But I'm not saying what he has is a trick. His other videos are more interesting. He actually electrostatically charges this plate. And I think what's happening there is by electrostatically charging the plate, he's putting charge on the silver dollar or the wooden nickel or whatever else he's living. And if you have it charged, I believe the charge will attract to the magnet. If you watch the new magnetism series, and we'll recreate that experiment. That's one of the reasons why we're going to high voltage. Again, like we said in the foundation series, once you break the charge balance of stuff, magical things are going to happen. And I'm sure that's what he did. If you looked at his other videos, he was actually applying a high voltage spark to this, and his other magnet was in a holder to protect him from getting shocked. And so now if this guy here has a lot of electrostatic charge on it, then it will become more attractive to the magnet. Okay, that's, I think, how he lifted all those other objects before. And we're going to get to that. That's going to be the next iteration of this. We're going to use the high voltage to pull a high voltage. The high voltage can be used for a lot of stuff, but this is going to be one more experiment, is to apply high voltage to this to see if it'll lift. And in that case, that would make sense that it is a magnetic attraction, because the loose charges are actually magnetizing to the magnetic field, but because they're trapped in the silver, they're going to pull the silver. And it would probably even work better if I put an insulating disc, and I think he actually had on one of his things an insulating disc on the magnet to prevent the charge from jumping to the magnet. That way there, the charge will be stuck on the and have to lift the coin. But we'll see when we get there. Okay, we got a lot of other experiments to do. This is just one of many I'm working on. New wave theory, I have reworked the CUDA software for 3D modeling. I might have said that in one of the earlier ones. I'm now experimenting with the software to understand how irrotational flows are established. I want to be able to reproduce the fluidic behavior before continuing with the wave model work. I want to get the fluidic properties, which we can clearly demonstrate, and those properties will be demonstrated on the initial retelling that I talked about before. And I get a lot of comments for Philip the cat. So in order to placate those people, I'm going to make one introduction video and introduce the star of many of the videos, Philip the cat. I would laugh my butt off if this is the video of my website that actually goes viral. But people do like cat videos, so let's see what happens. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for those who are donating. I know things are not as moving as fast as I'd like. Sorry, I've got a lot of work to do at work. I've got putting in a lot of overtime for projects, so I'm not getting as much time to put into this as I'd like. But things are all progressing. It's just going to take time. Thank you very much.